5 we're late. Well,
Welcome into SEC Live here in the voice of college football. Andrew Miller, Tucker Harlan, and Jackson Johnson here on a Wednesday evening. Yeah, about 9 minutes later than we were supposed to start, but that's because we always do a terrible job of getting into the stream get enough hour to chat these things over beforehand, run through the show. But we're here. We're ready to roll. We got a ton of fun stuff to get into. We're going to talk about quarterback news in the portal. LSU gets their guy, plus another couple options there to step into the room. Tennessee's search continues for a quarterback. We'll hit Texas real quick because I think the Longhorns have a very interesting portal haul to this point. We talked about that in one of our recent episodes. What's Sark doing? And clearly Sark had a plan, and it's working out really well. And then we're going to go through and grade every SEC team on their season. 2025 is officially in the rearview mirror for every SEC program. So how did that 2025 season go for all of those teams? You're definitely going to stay through the whole show, check all that stuff out. As you were tuned in, if you could leave us a like on the video, subscribe to the channel and have those notifications turned on. If you could share the stream, follow all of us on social media, all that wonderful stuff to keep up with what we're doing here on SEC Live, you're certainly going to want to do that. Gentlemen, how is your Wednesday evening going?
doing all right. It's only 227 days till week 0 of the 2026 season and 232 days till I assume we see an SEC team in week 1 on Thursday night of the college football season.
Yeah, I'm doing well. It rained all day here in Nashville. It's gotten cold again. I don't like it when it gets cold outside. It's cold and very windy too. So when you open a door in any public establishment, there's this like whole gust of wind. I don't particularly like that, but no, not doing well. I'm doing better, even though the Tennessee Texas A&M basketball game took years off my life last night. But we're doing fine. Survived in double overtime.
I'm a fat man with a beard, so the cold suits me well. And I'm enjoying there is a cold blast coming across much of the eastern U.S. over these coming days. So I'm looking forward to it down here on the Mississippi coast where we don't get cold that often. But when we do get cold, I certainly do embrace it. It works for me, but I understand for a lot of the others that they're not a big fan.
That means you make a lot of magic, like Hagrid from Harry Potter, man. Like that's
it. I mean, look, Hagrid's a great guy to be. Let's get into the transfer portal because we finally got the big news. Sam Leavitt is an LSU Tiger, the top-rated quarterback prospect in the transfer portal. Started his career at Arizona. Started his career at Michigan State before ultimately going to Arizona State, where he had a breakout season in 2024 as a part of that Sun Devils team that ends up going on to win the Big 12, go to the college football playoff. This year dealt with injuries. It was not quite the same level of play that you would have liked to have seen, but was a big-time player. High-level talent, very athletic, big enough frame, is willing to fire the ball downfield, even into tight windows, and has some playmaking ability to him for sure. And this is a guy that was the most coveted quarterback prospect in the portal. And we talked at length when we dove into a lot of the transfer portal news about LSU and their pursuit of a quarterback, because they had Sam Leavitt on campus. And Sam Leavitt was at an LSU basketball game with Lane Kiffin when all the news breaks that Washington's Damon Williams is trying to hit the portal after already agreeing to come back to Washington, and that LSU was going to be the likely landing spot, which created one of the most awkward and weird situations we've seen in the SEC in the last few, I should say months, weeks. It's Lane Kiffin is responsible for all of them. Every awkward situation, Lane Kiffin finds his way to be a part of it because that's just what the guy does. That whole, after that, obviously Leavitt does not commit to LSU. He goes and takes a visit to Tennessee and looked like he was going to be a Tennessee Vol. We'll talk about Tennessee here just in a bit. And then you finally find out that, Damon Williams is not going to hit the portal. He decides he's going to stay, and his agent dropped him, and that was a whole crazy situation. It's like, well, LSU, you're not going to get Sam Leavitt at this point, he's going to be a Tennessee Vol. Well, Lane Kiffin goes to Knoxville, where he is obviously so beloved, and he goes there to go and try to make Sam Leavitt happen, and it ends up happening. He gets Sam Leavitt. He gets the top-rated quarterback in the portal. Not the only quarterback. We can talk about the other guys here just in a bit, but Kiffin has his guy. It's the guy that he was targeting, but also was kind of targeting somebody else at the same time. So I don't know. That's a bit weird. What are our initial thoughts on Sam Leavitt to LSU and the weirdness of it all?
I want to know if Leavitt has guys around him to protect him. That's my first question for him. Do you have enough guys protecting you?
Well, they've overhauled the O-line room, or they're still working to overhaul the O-line room, frankly. They don't have many commits at that spot to this point. Tennessee's William Satterwhite and Darren Stray from Kentucky are the only offensive line portal commitments they currently have. Lost a lot of their other guys, like two of them are going to Mississippi State, of all places. But that's definitely going to be a big question for sure. Can they get the protection up front? Because offensive line was an issue for LSU previously, and now you're completely retooling that room with Kiffin stepping in. But Tucker, I mean, even before we get into the fit and what LSU needs to put around him, I mean, what are your thoughts on them landing Leavitt and the way that whole thing played out?
Yeah, it's another strange situation that Lane Kiffin created. And again, this is not just Lane Kiffin at work here. This is Cordell Landers being a nuisance again with college quarterbacks, just like he was with Nico last spring. He did it again with Damon Williams. And then I guess Damon just realized, oh, wait, I shouldn't trust this guy. Or however that conversation went down. And he ends up staying at Washington and apologizes for everything because of his guy's behavior. Like these kids, they have a lot of bad people in their ears that don't need to be in them. And a lot of times they give into the temptation of listening to those people. But Damon Williams wisened up and realized, you know what? I'm in a good situation at Washington. I'll stay there. As for Leavitt going to LSU, I do think that makes a little bit of an awkward situation. Like, hey, we still want you here. And I guess that's why Lane Kiffin had to hop on the plane, because the plan was to get Damon Williams. And then he was at Tennessee. Sam Leavitt was at Tennessee, and he was about to go to Miami after he went to Tennessee. And he had to just be like, hey, this thing didn't work. You still want to come here? I guess is the situation. It's all such a mess. And Lane Kiffin can't help but create messes everywhere he goes. But it is fascinating that he wound up back in Tennessee and ended up getting Sam Leavitt there. Obviously, I'll save some more thoughts on that for later, but it's fascinating how that whole thing transpired, to say the least. We'll see if it works out for him.
Well, if there's anything that can clean up a mess in this world, it's money. And I have to imagine LSU put together a very hefty NIL and rev share package for Sam Leavitt. I mean, it had to have been north of $5 million. I would imagine, if not up into the 6 or 7 million territory, given his ultimate standing right now is, frankly, look, the top quarterback in the portal. We just heard about Ty Simpson in Alabama was getting offered about $6.5 million. Did the portal by multiple schools and ultimately turned that down to stay in the NFL draft. So I think you're probably in that same type of range, up, getting close to $7 million when you're talking about Sam Leavitt, which it feels like a lot for a quarterback, but at the same time, that's the market today. And look, frankly, if you have a truly high-level quarterback, they probably are worth that to your team at this point in terms of what that could mean for you. Now, anyone who has followed me or tuned into this knows my thoughts on Sam Leavitt. I am not the biggest believer in the guy. I think he was a Jordan Tyson merchant at Arizona State, is overly reliant on just trying to make something happen out of structure. And if you force him to stay in the pocket and don't let him just throw to his first guy, I don't think he's that special. However, if there is a coach who knows how to make everything I just described work, it's Lane Kiffin, because he has done it with other quarterbacks. And I'm going to sound like a total Mississippi State hater here. And I get the guy did have a good rookie season. A lot of what I described about Sam Leavitt describes how Jackson Dart played at Ole Miss a lot of the time. And Dart was an incredible college quarterback, but he was definitely someone who it was making plays out of structure. It was using his legs and his physicality in the run game, his toughness. and then just making plays in the pass game where, hey, I'm just going to throw it up to this guy and put it on in a great spot for him to make a play. Even if I'm not great at reading through it all, I can make something happen. And I think that's probably what Lane Kiffin is going for here with Sam Leavitt. Is another guy who's kind of in a similar mold to what he had with Jackson Dart, which clearly worked really well for him in Oxford. And we talk about the surrounding pieces. They definitely have to figure out offensive line. Like, that is still the part that is a huge question mark for them. But they got the receivers. We hit on the receiving core the last time we talked about the portal. They have brought in a really impressive group, and there's a few more since. They're up to like 9 portal receivers committed at this point. So they've given them plenty of weapons. And if there's anybody in the country as a play caller, and I know Charlie Weiss calls the plays, but still, as a play designer that can put together a play where you tell the quarterback, hey, this guy's going to be wide open, throw it to him. Lane Kiffin is that guy, and they've got the talent at receiver to make that type of stuff happen. So, my thoughts on him aside, he's probably going to be very, very productive playing for Kiffin.
Yeah, I think he will be too, just with what that offense has and how it is designed to help quarterbacks succeed. You have to imagine they're looking at a year where you're at the very least going to take a step forward from 7-5 to whatever it is next year, 9, maybe a college football playoff appearance with 10 wins potentially. And the defense was the one redeeming quality of that team last year. So I think at this point you're looking at a pretty well-rounded football team if they've been able to keep a lot of the defensive pieces.
So Leavitt is also not the only quarterback that we have in Baton Rouge. Before Leavitt was committed, Landon Clark from Elon, so coming up from the FCS ranks, who as a freshman threw for about 2,300 yards, 18 touchdowns to 8 picks. Did also add, if you look at, try to pull up his total stats here, 193 yards on the ground, or 189 yards and 11 touchdowns on the ground. So someone who scored 29 touchdowns this past season and was a productive player for the Phoenix. So you get a guy like that in who maybe has some potential. And then they also have gotten the commitment from Hassan Longstreet, who was previously at USC, was super highly rated player coming out of high school. I believe it was like a 5-star this past year. He's a high 4-star transfer now at this point after his freshman season at USC. So you're getting the high profile player in as well that, hey, if Leavitt, this is his last year, he comes in and balls out. Next year, you kind of have a competition between the super high ceiling talented player who hasn't put it on the field versus a guy that, and Landon Clark, that still has a few years to go, but is still a younger player, but you've seen him go out and be productive. He's got a little bit of experience. That's probably your number 2 quarterback this year behind Leavitt. What are your thoughts on these other additions in the quarterback room in Baton Rouge?
When I heard that Longstreet was leaving USC, I felt like the first place he was going to look at was LSU. Because, I mean, like, LSU is looking for a quarterback. And, it was like, okay, well, he could go there. Or, he could go to Tennessee. One of those two. Like, that's what I thought on Longstreet. I thought one of those places would be a fit for him, honestly.
Yeah, with Longstreet, I'm not surprised that he ended up at LSU. Lane Kiffin has done it before with USC quarterbacks. See Jackson Dart at Ole Miss. It's one example of a guy that's been productive for Lane Kiffin in that system in the past. And I think that guy probably emerges as your starter in, I guess, a year or two if Sam Leavitt takes off for the draft after the 2026 season. I guess we'll see how he does this season before we start having those discussions. Landon Clark is interesting just because of all the production that we've seen. Like, he's the guy that has played a lot in college so far, but hasn't done it at a super high level, whereas Hassan Longstreet was at USC this past year, played some, not much, obviously, with Maava being the starter there, and they're keeping Maava around, so he hit the portal. So it's like, do you want experience or talent as your next starter after Sam Leavitt? So I think that is a very interesting battle. I would imagine Hassan Longstreet would probably win it in 2027 if it got to that point, but I also know that there's another USC quarterback floating around out there in Malachi Nelson, who is on his fourth school now and lost the starting job at UTEP. So you never know once these guys get beat out for a starting job at a major program like that.
Just for LSU overall, we hit it earlier. I think O-line is kind of the last big thing to look at for them. They've added a ton of receivers. The tight end position, they seem to be in a good spot. Trey Green coming back, and they've also added some guys in the portal. Caden Durham announced his return to the Tigers today after initially hitting the portal. So their top rusher plus Harlan Berry coming back. So they're going to have their top 2 running backs returning as well. They figure out offensive line. I mean, it's Kiffin. That offense is going to cook. And defensively, I mean, there is a lot to replace. The big thing I will always look to is what does D-line look like? And they've done a great job in the portal with defensive line recruiting as well. So they're probably going to be able to be pretty solid on that side of the ball as well. It's an LSU team that right now has the #1 transfer portal class in the country. So the portal king strikes again with the job that he's been able to do. LSU's bringing in quite a bit of talent, and they have the quarterback to lead them now in Sam Leavitt. Sam Leavitt making the decision to go to Baton Rouge obviously directly impacted another SEC program, that being the Tennessee Volunteers. Tennessee, excuse me if I've missed the news, was a ruling made official on Aguilar?
No. So here's the thing. They got together on a conference call on Monday and agreed to delay the decision for like another week. So there has been no decision made. And right now the prospects of him getting that extra year are not good from what we understand.
How much of a likelihood by a percentage would that be exactly?
Oh, it's not high. I mean, you're probably looking at least under 30, maybe probably under 20 by this point. Unless the court has some miracle decision here in the next week, because the courts march to the beat of their own drum. I think Tennessee has to move on, unfortunately.
What's the plan for Tennessee?
Well, let's get into that, because it felt like they were going all in on Leavitt. We had that discussion. Is that the right move? Is that what you actually want to do if you're Josh Heupel? Clearly, they felt Leavitt was going to be the guy they needed to go and get. That doesn't happen. Bo Pribula was the other guy who, in terms of more high-profile transfer, bigger name, that Tennessee was considering taking him. He goes to Virginia. And now you look around at all the portal QBs that are out there. Most of them are committed. Most of them are signed. And you don't have any truly obvious options for the Volunteers. Tucker, where does Tennessee turn? And what options are they trying to find? What do you think is going to be the path?
So first, I want to discuss some things in regard to Leavitt and Pribula before I get into that, because really there's not a ton of great options at this point, although I do think there is one in mind fairly close to Tennessee. First and foremost, I will say with Leavitt, and if you're an LSU fan watching this right now, I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say Tennessee did not want Sam Leavitt, because obviously they offered him, to what we understand, $6.5 to $7 million, as opposed to what LSU was offering, which I think was closer to the 5 or 6 ballpark. So obviously the Tennessee coaching staff wanted him. Personally, I don't think that would have been a good move. And I have a few reasons for that. Number one, you got to look at the fact that you were offering him that much money. And we know the injury history there. And let's say he gets hurt at some point this season, because all these NIL payments, to my knowledge, are largely up front. Let's say he gets hurt. And, Tennessee has put price hikes on its season ticket prices as a result of, or in anticipation of revenue sharing with what they call a talent fee there. They've gone up, I believe, 14% over a 2-year period. And, if you are funding an injured guy $7 million who only plays so many games, that's not going to sit well with your fan base. And who's to say he won't transfer out if he's not getting the money that he wants? Because remember, he has 2 years of eligibility left because he redshirted at Michigan State. So if he is not getting the money he wants at UT come spring of 2027, yeah, he could absolutely transfer out, and you'd have a lot of really upset Tennessee fans. That's one thing that I think is problematic. Number two, you bring a guy like that in. Let's say Tennessee had landed him, and in 2026, he has a solid year. He's not playing like an NFL first-round quarterback, but he has a solid year. Obviously, there's the transfer thing involved, but if he stays, like if he's happy at Tennessee, you've got two very talented quarterbacks behind him in Faison Brandon and George McIntyre. One of those two guys may end up entering the transfer portal if he stays around, and George McIntyre would be going into his third year of eligibility if that happened. And he's entering his redshirt freshman season in 2026, but I think that would create a bit of a mess with Tennessee's quarterback situation in the future. That's the second reason I think it could be problematic. And number three, albeit this was out of necessity last spring, but the last last quarterback that Tennessee paid anywhere close to the money they were offering Sam Leavitt was Nico. When he committed to Tennessee originally, he got $8 million to come to Tennessee, and he ended up transferring out within 2 seasons. And again, out of necessity, Tennessee went and got Joey Aguilar for a little bit of a cheaper price out of the portal. With what's left at quarterback in the transfer portal, I think it's probably smartest if you go and get somebody for not as much, just because we know you don't have to have a super, super high-dollar quarterback out of the portal coming and playing in this offense, because we saw it with Joey this past season. He replaced a guy that was making at least 2 or 3 times the amount of money he was making and did considerably better than he did. So, yeah, all of those are reasons why I think Tennessee is probably better off without Sam Leavitt. I obviously Tennessee wanted him, but I do not think it would have been the best decision. So about 20 minutes after we discussed Leavitt on our live show the other night, on Monday night, Bro Prabula officially committed to Virginia. Now, from what we understand, Prabula is a much better runner than he is a passer. Would that have been a great fit? We won't really know, because I don't really love making this comparison, but it's a lot like Haynes King, where you have a guy that he's a solid football player, will help the team win in other ways aside from just throwing the ball. Not always the greatest thrower of the football, though, and that's kind of what you're looking at with Prabula. But given that he was the best option in that time, and given the fact that he only had 1 year of eligibility left, while you have 2 quarterbacks, a redshirt freshman and then a freshman coming in Faison Brandon, that would have been a good fit for Tennessee, and they didn't strike there. So then you look at what is essentially Plan D now, because Joey Aguilar has not had his thing approved. I don't know when that's going to happen, as we said a few minutes ago, but where does Tennessee turn now? Obviously, Longstreet was a name that was floated around. That's another one I didn't think was a good fit, just because he and McIntyre are in the same class. One of those guys is going to transfer out eventually.
Maybe Bryson Beaver at Oregon, who just entered the portal.
But again, that's another guy that was a signee in the same class as Faison Brandon. Do you really want to create that competition there? Because this staff has made a lot of promises to Faison Brandon. I mean, he was the first commit in the class of 2026, and that's going back to August of 2024 that he was committed. Yeah, he'd been committed a long time to Tennessee. So I think the one that I keep seeing floated around on the internet is, I believe his name is Teron Dickens from Western Carolina. Smaller quarterback, threw for 3,800 yards, 38 touchdowns, 2 interceptions last season for the Catamounts. From what I'm seeing, like I don't like using the dollar store analogies, but kind of like a dollar store Bryce Young to a degree. A guy that could come in, maybe give you an exciting offense for 1 year, but you'd only have him for the 1 year. And you know what? That's fine. I think that's what Tennessee needs at this point. Just because I don't think you can get guys that are coming in for 2-3 years at quarterback, because again, you have 2 talented ones on your roster. You don't need a guy that can be a multi-year starter. But I know I've ranted a lot on that, but it felt necessary, because while Tennessee wanted Sam Leavitt, I'm just not sure if that was the best thing for them to do. I know they were bidding a lot, but probably best that they lost that battle.
Is Austin Novosad someone that wouldn't stand out? He has a couple years left to play, and he has not been a starter, but he is a older player in the sense that he's been in college football 3 years. And I get it. He hasn't played a lot, but 3 years sitting behind 3 really good quarterbacks. And if you were going to go for a guy who is from a bigger program and a higher talent profile, I know Oregon has been really excited about him in the past.
Yeah, that one would be interesting to me because I think that's basically the same thing you would be getting with Sam Leavitt, just with less experience, just in terms of the eligibility. A guy that's been in college for 3 seasons would be coming in as a redshirt junior in your class, would have a couple years of eligibility if he's already played for 3. I don't really know because I look at the guys Tennessee has gotten out of the transfer portal to this point under Josh Heupel, and remember 3 of the 4 starters have been portal guys for Tennessee in the Heupel era. All of those guys were relatively experienced as starters. Of course, Joey had the 2 years at Appalachian State. Milton, though he got beat out down the stretch in 2020, did start the season for Michigan. And then Hendon Hooker played quite a bit at Virginia Tech in 2019 and 2020. So you've had guys in your system that have played a lot of football in the past, and I don't know if Novosad necessarily fits that mold. I don't know if that's what they're looking for, but I do trust Josh Heupel with his quarterback evaluations. They always seem to know what they're doing.
Here's a name I'd never heard until just now, rolling through portal quarterbacks. He's way down the list, and I've not watched one snap of this guy, so I don't know how his production translates to potential fit. But Gavin Suckup from the University of Indianapolis, 6'1", 188, so huge.
Wow.
But this past, looks like basically a 3-year starter, and this past season he threw for nearly 3,700 yards, 41 touchdowns, 72% completions, 7 picks, ran for 321 yards or 323 and 5 touchdowns. So if you're looking for I think that's the D2 level.
Trinidad was D2.
Yeah, so I mean, if you're looking for someone who has been super productive and played a lot of college football, there you go, Gavin Suckup. I haven't watched a snap of the guy. I have no idea how he would fit, but it is an interesting situation. And I apologize if you hit this and I just missed it because I was trying to find a quarterback option to go to.
Yeah.
With the younger guys, I mean, is there any possibility, Tennessee, you just say, like, look, let's just roll with one of them and move forward? And it's like, what are Tennessee's prospects right now next season? Is this a team that if they get the quarterback in, they're talking about contending, or what's the thought there?
So here's the thing with the quarterback that's so interesting is it's hard to sell guys on insurance plans unless your name is Dylan Raiola or Dante Moore, for that matter, out of the portal. It's not easy to do that. Guys want to transfer somewhere and play immediately. That's just where we are in college football now. And I think Tennessee would like to get a guy in that could start, but at the same time, I think you could open up a competition between McIntyre and whoever you got out of the portal, because here's the real problem. And it's not that McIntyre can't be a capable starter. It's the fact that he and Faison Brandon are the only 2 scholarship quarterbacks on this roster. Mason Phillips, the guy behind them, is a walk-on. And, Tennessee has been largely fortunate with quarterback injuries under Josh Heupel. I know Hendon, of course, tore his ACL in that South Carolina game, but that was with only, 2 games left to go in the season, if you include the bowl game. So they've been relatively fortunate there. Now, injuries they can happen, and I feel like you have to prepare for them. So, I think in worst case scenario, because you had that first game against Furman, and they're shrinking the non-conference play to just 3 games now. And I think in that first game, what you could see potentially, if you were to get a guy out of the portal from one of these smaller schools, you could see kind of a back and forth quarterback battle between this guy and McIntyre, and just see who you like between the 2 of them going into that Georgia Tech game. So I think that's a good game to try and figure some of that stuff out. Good spot, just knowing everything we know about what that situation is going to look like this year.
Oh, man, I'm looking at the highlight tapes of Gavin Suckup, and honestly, whoever gets him is going to be very happy this offseason.
I mean, look, honestly, to be fair though, we just found out about this guy 2 minutes ago, but like you brought up Trinidad, and honestly, that was a very unique situation where like Ole Miss was Austin Simmons was the quarterback, but they went and they paid Chambliss, which I mean he was going to go to Temple, and they just found a way to like, hey man, like we'll pay you more. Like no, we can't guarantee you a start. We'll let you compete. Like but Austin's probably gonna be the guy. But if he goes down, like you're gonna get an opportunity, and we'll find ways to get you in the game. And he ends up taking over. Maybe you bring someone like this in who's got a lot of production, who's maybe got some talent like that. You go into it like this is a full open competition. You don't guarantee anything, but it's a veteran quarterback with an option in a room. It'll be very interesting to see the direction Tennessee chooses to take that. Close out the transfer portal talk here. One class we did want to hit on. We talked about in a recent episode how Texas, it was like every player on that offense was saying goodbye. If you were not named Arch Manning, you were into the portal and going elsewhere. And it's Texas. You know they have money. So either it's a dumpster fire and all these guys hate Sark and don't want to play for him anymore, although they probably do hate Sark, even with what I'm about to describe. Or Sark told them, we're not paying any of you close to what you guys want. So if you want to get paid at a high level, go elsewhere. We're making some changes. I think they're making some changes. When you look at the guys that Texas has gone out and signed now, they've added some pieces along the offensive line, but like Raleek Brown coming in at running back, Hollywood Smothers coming in at running back. Obviously, Cam Coleman, the big-time pickup at receiver, that is absolutely huge for them. Michael Masunas, Masunas or whatever from Michigan State at tight end. They are loading up with some big-time weapons around Arch Manning for next season. And it's very clear like this was a chance. Like Texas viewed this as an opportunity. We are going to go and get more talent in here. We have to think they're going to get involved in the Jordan Seaton sweepstakes to go get a top-end left tackle to protect Arch Manning's blind side. Feels like Texas has gotten that figured out, and it's not so much a concern about the weapons they're going to have on offense next year.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Texas, sorry. Excuse me. Yeah, Texas is making the moves to win a national championship for 2026. They're not there to, well, they would like to win the Red River rivalry, of course. They would like to win the ACC, but these are the moves you make to win a national championship. And they are really showing that by adding Coleman and Smothers and Brown, just adding so many guys on offense. And I'm going to tell you, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the Longhorns in 2026.
Yeah, I think all of their acquisitions have been really eye-opening just because they have – they've gone out and gotten guys that were near the top of the portal in terms of prospects. Obviously, Cam Coleman considered the best at one point in the portal while he was still available. And you figured he was going to go to a school where they had a nice quarterback situation in place. And sure enough, they have one of those with Arch Manning, who we're going to talk ourselves into it eventually, but he will probably be a Heisman favorite in 2026. Just to be completely honest, with the way he's played the back end of the season, the momentum that they've built going into the year or going into the offseason. And then you mentioned running backs too. Of course, Hollywood Smothers, very good at NC State, started his career at Oklahoma. I was called out for that earlier today. But Raleek Brown, yeah, nice addition from Arizona State as well, because it was him and then the other guy whose name I'm blanking on, Kanye something from Udo, yeah. I thought it was Udo because there's an offensive lineman for the Titans named Udo. But, yeah, they've got some very nice pieces coming into that class offensively, and I'm sure it's going to make for an entertaining season for them. They're going to get tested next season, though. And, they got Ohio State early on in the year. Of course, they got to come to Tennessee for their SEC opener. I'm sure that'll be a charged-up environment because the Battle of the UTs is something we've not seen in a very long time in football. Of course, you got a trip to LSU as well. You're at Texas A&M, which you can never count them out. Oklahoma has, caused them problems traditionally, even though Texas believe leads that series. But I think the thing at this point is, can you put all this stuff together? That's the big question in all this, because Sark has had really good teams at Texas. This is going to be another one of those teams, but we've yet to see them, really go the distance, make it to a national championship with all the pieces. I understand it's hard to do with the expanded college football playoff, but this may be the team that does it. We'll see.
Yeah, have to think Texas is going to be one of the favorites for sure, with the pieces that they're going to have offensively now around Arch Manning, having some key guys coming back on defense as well. Obviously, with now you got oh my God, why am I blanking on his name? The DC stepping Muschamp. You got Muschamp there calling the defense, so that'll be very fun to watch. Texas is going to be firmly in the mix. They got the hype going into this year, and they did not really deliver upon it. Which, hey, let's talk a little bit about that here just in a sec. Some teams not delivering on hype, but next year feels like it could be a big year for the Longhorns. When we come back, let's do some grades for the 2025 season. How did the season play out for every single team in the SEC? We will give them our grade and whether or not they aced the class or whether or not they failed miserably.
College football is even more exciting when you've got some action on the line, and the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread, and I've got a 40-plus year track record. 11-0 in the college football playoff for me last year against the money line, 8-3 against the spread. And I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill of Wager Talk is our ace in the hole, show stopper. 7 years with the Voice of College Football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly under-the-radar pick. 28-12 against the spread the last 3 years. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Corey Bratta, Matt Zemek, and Steve Dace. Check out those numbers. Become a YouTube or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and then select a betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2025 a winner now.
And that's why you go to Mark Rogers, Steve Dace from the Michigan Podcast, Matt Zemek, Corey Bratta, and for those under-the-radar picks the week on VOCFB Bets, Steve Merrill from Wager Talk. All right here on VOCFB Bets.
Absolutely. By the way, during that break, I was watching Gavin Suckup Pilots, and I'm sold. Tennessee needs to go and make this kid be the guy. Yep. This is the Gavin Suckup podcast right here. We're all going to buy in wherever he lands in 2026. You heard about him here first as we discovered him during this show.
Gavin Suckup Live. That's what we're renaming the show to.
Yeah, I'm genuinely going to keep up with where this kid ends up going forward. I think that's going to be really funny to see. He's probably going to go to like some MAC school and end up throwing for 1,000,000 yards there. Or no, because we brought him up, he's going to go to a MAC school and be a total bust. That's probably what's in store now. So the 2025 season has come to a close officially. Every SEC team's season has finished out. Want to give grades. How did the 2025 season go? So we're going to go letter grades, A, B, C, D, F, and the guys, if you want to give a plus, minus to further dive into it, you're certainly welcome to. We're going to hit every team in the SEC. We'll each give our grade, and we'll run down the list, starting with the Ole Miss Rebels. College football playoff appearance, 13 wins on the season, I believe. Win the Sugar Bowl, go to the semifinals, like I said. I mean, I feel like this got to be unanimous. This is like an A+ for sure, right?
Yeah. I think just when you think about the amount of adversity they had to overcome going into the postseason and getting a couple postseason wins, I think that's really important to consider. I looked at Ole Miss as a team this year, and I usually try to do some projections before the season, but I looked at their schedule and I was like, the home schedule is pretty nice for Ole Miss this year. They got a couple tough road games in Oklahoma and Georgia, but you got a couple winnable ones at Mississippi State and Kentucky. If you go 1-1 against Oklahoma and Georgia, you'd be 11-1, and sure enough, they were in the regular season. So, and that's with losing all that stuff to the NFL draft and Jackson Dart and all those guys on the offense last season. So, no, very, very good year for Ole Miss.
Yeah, I mean, like A+ for Ole Miss, especially when your head coach is skipping town on you in the middle of the night and you go on a huge playoff run. And yeah, you go close but no cigar in the semifinals, but still though, you're the last SEC team standing. I don't think anybody had that on their bingo cards in 2025, honestly.
No, and look, I mean, I think even if they had just gone to the playoff in general, to me, that's going to be at least an A, if not an A+, because this Ole Miss team was not expected to be there. Last year's Rebel team was the team supposed to do it. And this team, look, the schedule was favorable, but they took advantage of the biggest games that they had to. And it's the first 11-win regular season in school history. They won their two biggest rivalry games. No, they did not go to Atlanta, win the SEC, but you'll take getting the rematch against Georgia in the Sugar Bowl all day, every day. Obviously, got the home playoff win before that. Unquestioned A+. And Tucker, you're right. The Lane Kiffin of it all and that whole circumstance only makes it sweeter if you're an Ole Miss fan that you had the run that you did. A+ season for sure. And now they're going to the Pete Golding era officially, and we'll see what that means for them moving forward. But this year was the best season in school history by far. Georgia, SEC champions, go to the college football playoff, obviously lose to Ole Miss in the Sugar Bowl. How are we grading the Bulldogs?
A-.
Yeah, Georgia's tricky. I know Georgia fans would probably grade it a little harsher than we will just because, they've won 2 national championships recently. They're the last SEC team to do it. Probably one of the most capable SEC programs of doing it right now, just out of everybody in the league. I'm hovering right between A- and B+ on them, just because you in essence got better this season than you did last year, but both an overall record for one, and then two, you're going into the playoff with your starting quarterback, unlike they did last season. And they were winning games last season, but it was not pretty for a lot of the year with those wide receivers dropping all those passes, all the running back injuries they had last season. Carson Beck looking kind of iffy at times. But now they come in, they get Gunnar Stockton. They're a better rounded offense. Defensively struggled a little bit out the gate and then did better. But I think that's what makes it hurt a little bit for Georgia is the fact that you got to the same place you did last year, literally, and still lost. And you're not going to at least the semifinals of the college football playoff. So I feel like that has to sting a little bit if you're a Georgia fan. So overall, solid season, but it's just kind of hard when you've won national championships, 2 of them in the last 5 seasons, and you have results that while they're still solid, they're disappointing in your eyes.
I'm thinking B+. I'll take, I'm not a Georgia fan, but I fully understand where they would be coming from. And you're right. Like the fans are obviously always going to grade their team more harshly, but like the expectation is to compete for national championships. I think this Georgia team was expected. They were one of the favorites to win the title coming into the year and never quite met that. I don't think the receiving room developed the way that they thought it would. I don't think the run game developed the way they thought it would. Stetson Bennett was mostly fine, but defensively they were disappointing. Like this was not a dominant Georgia defense. Yes, it got better as the year went along, and I gave them a lot of credit throughout the year for the adjustments they made in game and from one performance to the next. But they saw Ole Miss twice and Ole Miss them up twice. And for the second straight year, go one and done in the postseason and not win a playoff game, you can't call a year where you win the SEC a disappointment and a failure. Like it's a passing year for sure, and it's a good year, but it's not the year that Georgia fans were fully expecting. So I've got it solidly like as a B. Go ahead.
Well, and honestly, third straight year that you come up short, basically. And this second straight year where you're losing in the quarterfinals. If they lose in the quarterfinals again next season, how mad are they going to be at the coaching staff? Like, obviously not at Kirby, but Mike Bobo. That's going to be the question there.
Well, they're perpetually mad at Mike Bobo.
They don't like him at all.
There's never being okay with Mike Bobo. Texas A&M. And this is just the way they fell in the standings. I know Alabama ultimately advanced further, but I'm going off of ESPN. They had A&M next. Started the year 11-0. which is like they've never done that, or at least it hasn't been in a very, very long time. They go to the playoff, but man, it kind of feels like the way it ended probably taints things a little bit. I still think, though, you probably have to call this an A, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because it's like if I'm just grading A&M based on the last 2 games alone, I'm grading it as a C minus, like based off the last 2 games alone. But if I'm looking at the first 11 games of the season, like Notre Dame, for example, where they had a tremendous way of winning in South Bend, and that comeback they made against South Carolina, that's an A plus, right? So I'm kind of rounding it out, and I'm just gonna go. I'm gonna go A on A&M because I mean, like the rivalry week loss to Texas. I mean that's always stuck in my mind. It's just gonna be. I mean, you can win a national title, and if you lost a rivalry week to your biggest rival, that's still gonna be stuck in my mind. It's just how I am with A&M. Honestly, I mean, it's so weird with them. But Mike Elko's doing a tremendous job over there, and they're really just putting their money where their mouths are, honestly. Because, I mean, like when Jimbo was there, they had all the money in the world, but they did nothing with it. Mike Elko is making sure that they are a constant contender in the playoffs. And I think we're going to see more of that real soon for the rest of this decade.
Yeah, I think I am stuck somewhere between an A and an A minus on this one because between Johnny Football's first season as a starter where he won the Heisman and 2025, they were perpetually known as Texas 8-4. They were always stuck there. This is the first time you've really seen growth from them in a while. I don't count that COVID season because, COVID and everything was kind of goofy that year. But no, you look at what they did in the regular season, very, very impressive stuff. We're at this weird point in college football too, where like only so many teams can go out with wins now, especially if you're in the college football playoff. Like you're more likely to be heartbroken at the end of the season than you are feeling good about your team next year. But looking at this team, Jackson's spot on with rivalry week. That is going to taint a lot of what you had built up from this season because they got the 11 wins, but you lose that game. I'm not saying they were kind of stuck in a fog after that going into the Miami game, but they end up losing that game. That's a home playoff game too. That's a big, big thing for you to try and take advantage of. And losing like that, I think definitely tarnishes some of what happened this season. So I probably lean closer to A minus on this, but overall, very, very good year for Texas A&M. Definite step in the right direction.
I think I probably land on the A minus too, which you shouldn't say for a team that I know A&M always has these expectations, but they never come close to it. But like they have the 11 wins, they go to the playoff. But man, losing to Texas when Texas looked so crappy throughout the year, frankly, and then losing a home playoff game where you just look completely incompetent out there, that really taints things. But it's still an overall very good year. And yeah, Mike Elko's got things trending in the right direction. Alabama, go to the playoff, 10-win regular season. Had to hold on a couple times there. It was kind of a question, were they going to get in? But they get in, go on the road to Norman, avenge that loss against the Sooners. Then the Rose Bowl happens. Not pretty in any way, shape, or form. It kind of an up and down year. You had some impressive wins throughout the course of the season, but then things kind of, felt like they were sort of floundering down the stretch. Like I said, they do get the playoff win. Go to Atlanta. You can't leave that part of it out, but you did lose that game. Where do we land? And obviously, Jackson will go to you first here.
I know a lot of Bama Nation would probably say that's a D this season, but that's not where I'd land it. This season has been quite an interesting one for Alabama. I mean, we started out with a loss to Florida State, of course, but we got a win over Georgia. And, we beat our top rivals, Auburn and Tennessee, of course. But we didn't do so high against Oklahoma in the regular season. Got smacked to smithereens by the Georgia Bulldogs in the SEC title game. And there was like an ugly uproar as to whether, from some people, whether Alabama should have been in or not, because it's like, you shouldn't be in because, you lost in the SEC title game. So what does Alabama do? They show people why they were in the playoffs in the first place by chewing up Oklahoma like a chicken nugget in the first round, getting some revenge on Friday night with Chris Fowler, Kirk Herbstreit on the call. I mean, the defense looking really good. I mean, Alabama got smacked by Indiana, of course, and I know it was not good. But honestly, it's like I told Rocket Rant and Alec Keyser on CFB Express. Whoever wins the 2026 Rose Bowl New Year's Day is going to win the national title. Doesn't matter who wins that game. 2025 Indiana is basically 2019 LSU, 2001 Miami, 2004 USC, 1971 Nebraska, like 1994, 1995 Nebraska. I mean, that's where 2025 Indiana is. I mean, I don't want to call it early, but that's how it is. I mean, because I know some people are just poo-pooing the Alabama loss to Indiana, and nobody should be getting beat like that, like they did in the Rose Bowl. But it wasn't like we lost to a 2007 Indiana team fighting for bowl eligibility on ESPN Classic. Good grief. But where would I grade Alabama? I would say 2025 was an A-. I think Alabama's really going to have to make sure they get to work on the offensive line, of course. And we're going to wait and see what happens. I say don't throw the baby out with the bathwater on DeBoer. I think it's completely dumb to do that. Trust the process of what he's doing. I believe he can get things done for the Crimson Tide.
I think I'm at a firm B+ on Alabama this year because you have to factor in several things here. Year one, year two, progression for Kalen DeBoer. That's good. Now, as far as some elements of the game, how did they look at times in some of these games? Like you got pushed around up front, both sides of the football. You didn't run the football particularly well.
No.
You managed to win a lot of games, though, which I think is important. But again, you showed signs of progression. You got back to the college football playoff, and you won a game in the college football playoff, which is good. But again, I don't know if I can go much higher than that. Like, I feel like A- is almost a little too extreme for me. I don't know why it is, but that's just how I feel about Bama. Like, solid year overall, but we've seen better years from Bama recently.
Agreed.
I'm at a B. Like, it was a successful season. Like you said, they got better. They did reach the SEC championship game. And look, the fact that you were able to win a playoff game, that's all great. But I will say I was super high on this Bama team coming into the season. I had them as my national championship pick because I saw the pieces that they were supposed to have on the offensive line, guys that we thought were going to be fantastic there, Caden Proctor, and it just never really materialized. And the receiving core. And you thought that the OC change that they would be able to run the football better. Defensively, I thought they had a lot of really good key pieces back that it made sense for this to be an outstanding unit. And look, they did get better, but Tucker's right. Lines of scrimmage were not great for them. I thought their pass rush was pretty good throughout the year, but run defense was not always there, especially in the playoff. But run game was completely non-existent the entire year. And it was a successful season for sure, but I don't think this team played to their potential. So I can't fully give it. I can't give them an A off of that, but I do think you're overall talking about a good year. So I think a B for Bama makes sense.
Yeah, because I mean, I didn't like how Alabama played week one or against Oklahoma in the regular season or in the ACC title game or the Rose Bowl. But it's just I can always say on the bright side, at least Alabama beat its top rivals, all their top rivals. I mean, that's always a bright side the way I look at it.
Texas Longhorns, 10-win season when it was all said and done.
That's a B-, man. Like that's a B-. Like,
I think I'm going to go lower, but I'll get y'all's thoughts in here. But look, Arch Manning down the stretch got better as the year went along. You did beat Oklahoma. You beat Texas A&M to close the year. You beat Michigan.
And they beat Arkansas, right? So they beat all their rivals.
They did beat Arkansas, even though they don't really care about that game, but Arkansas does.
Well, I do, because I'm an old man in a young man's body.
There you go. But, man, overtime with Kentucky and Mississippi State, those garbage teams, like I say as a Mississippi State fan,
yeah, that's bad.
Wanted to die after that game. And then losing at Florida. Certainly not great. What are we giving the Longhorns here?
Yeah, the Florida loss sucks, obviously, but I'll say this. They got better as the season went on, and they're building momentum. And I think, you're at a point in time in college football where, if you're not a college football playoff team, how can we build momentum for next year is how you look at the season as you approach the end of it. You had the 2 losses early on, and you knew the Georgia game coming down the stretch was a game that was going to be tough to win with it being in Athens. So with all that in mind, I'm going to give it a solid B. Obviously not the year that they were hoping for out there in Austin, but it's something to build off of, I think.
Well, I did say B minus, right?
Yeah, you did.
I thought I did. Yeah, because because the bright side is Texas beat all their rivals, of course. That's always a bright side. But that Florida loss, I can't overlook. It's terrible. It's just terrible. And how are they going to be in the big games? That's going to be my question for 2026. Because, yeah, you're loading up on offense, but how are you going to do against the Ohio State Buckeyes when they come to your backyard 2026? I'm not expecting to beat Ohio State, but you got to play better. That's what I'm expecting. 2025, you lost to the Buckeyes at Columbus. Okay, no shame in that. But after you lost to Florida, you're sitting there going, well, we shouldn't have a hard non-con schedule. We shouldn't be playing these tough games anyway, because if we were 10-2, we'd be in a place. Okay, don't lose to a 4-8 Florida team. Don't stink like pee against Florida. Don't do that. I mean, you didn't lose to a Tim Tebow Florida team. You didn't lose to a Steve Spurrier Florida team. You lost to a terrible Billy Napier Florida team where every week it was, is Billy Napier getting fired? Is he staying on? Is he getting fired? Is he staying on? It was like Russian roulette figuring out whether Billy Napier was going to be staying or leaving. And Florida upsets Texas? Yeah, no. That's why I was like, B minus for the Texas Longhorns. But like you said, Tucker, a lot of momentum through 2026. I mean, spoiling Texas A&M's unbeaten season and SEC title hopes. I mean, that's always an awesome way to go out. And beating up on the Michigan Wolverines on New Year's Eve. That's a good way to go out right there. And Arch Manning got better. And I didn't like how people were just throwing the baby out with the bathwater on Arch Manning. Say, oh, he was terrible. Here's the thing, though. Peyton Manning wasn't, a godlike QB at first. He got better over time. That's what you're seeing with Arch Manning. And I think some of the criticism that Arch Manning got through earlier the 2025 season, I think people are really going to forget all about that in 2026, especially when they see some of the stats that he puts out for the 2026 season.
I think I go C+. This is a team that I think had higher expectations coming into the year. And yes, look, 2 of the losses are completely understandable on the road in Columbus and in Athens, but you were dreadful offensively for the majority of the year, including in both of those losses. The game in Athens, you were not even competitive. So I still take that as a poor performance overall. Obviously, the Florida game, Jackson hit it plenty. That's inexcusable. The performances against Kentucky and at Mississippi State, even in wins, I get it. They had some nice moments where they stepped up and closed the year well, and which is why it's not they just barely pass for the season because, like you said, the rivalry wins. You closed well. Arch Manning, you eventually got to a point with Arch where you say, okay, he's the guy we thought he was going to be. That did happen. So there is the positives you can draw on to move forward. It's not like this is a season where you had to reevaluate everything. But for them to be that poor offensively throughout the year, I think is a big knock. For them to take some of the losses, have the performances they did, I can't grade them more as like a C+. Again, it wasn't a failure, but it was not what they were expecting. Oklahoma, we don't have Josh here on the show tonight to talk about the Sooners, but we'll start rolling through some of these a little bit quicker. I think Oklahoma, I mean, you got to give it to me like a A at least for sure,
yeah.
Right?
Because the moment things got really awesome was against Michigan in week 2. That's when you knew things were going to get really better. And yeah, they had a tight win against Auburn, but still, though, John Mateer got hurt, I believe, in that game. That was not good. And they looked really good against Kent State, but everybody looks good against Kent State. Sorry, Mark. Shout out to the boss man whose alma mater is Kent State. But
he and
yeah,
Nick Saban both.
Huh?
He and Saban both Kent State alums. How about that?
Yep. But yeah, Texas on the Red River rivalry. Oklahoma lost that game. Not good, but I think Matera was hurting. Clearly, he got back too soon on that game, in my opinion. Got back way too soon. But you lost a tight with the Ole Miss. But then, like, the season was on the line against Tennessee, and the Oklahoma defense stepped up big time against the Vols. And then you had the Oklahoma defense stepping up big time against the Alabama Crimson Tide, to the point where Sean McDonough was throwing out his puberty voice over that Pitt sits on Ty Simpson. I can tell you do not want to mess with that Oklahoma defense. And, they stepped it up against Missouri and LSU. It was pretty good right there. 10-2, no one's really expecting you to basically fight for an SEC title or basically get into the playoffs. And I said that this 2025 Oklahoma team was much, much similar to 2011 Clemson because of the circumstances of the coaches. Venables was basically on a hot seat, realized he had to make a change of offensive coordinator. He was not getting it done with Joe John Finley. I mean, guy's name is Joe John. That's a dead giveaway right there. I mean, that sounds like some dude that Hank works with at Strickland Propane at King of the Hill. I mean, you're never going to get done with a guy like that. But you got Ben Arbuckle as your new offense coordinator. You got everybody that you can get from Washington State. They're helping you get the job done. Yeah, you lost to the Alabama Crimson Tide in the playoffs, but nobody was saying Oklahoma needed to win a natty. They just wanted to see some progress. And I think everybody got some progress for the Oklahoma Sooners. So I'm going to give this 2025 season for Oklahoma an A- on this one. But I ranged between A and A- simply because of the circumstances heading into the 2025 season and how they did during the season.
Yeah, I'm going to side with Jackson here, straddling between that A and A- because I thought initially it's like, this team, they were essentially a better version of what they were a season ago, more talented, still struggling a little bit on offense, but very good defensively. But the fact that they were able to deliver down the stretch and get those wins at Tennessee and Alabama, I think says a lot about Brent Venables and the direction that program's headed in. The question now becomes, what can we do to make this offense better if you're Oklahoma, which sounds so crazy to say after having watched them tear up the Big 12 offensively for about 10 years. So this is a good year for them overall. I think it's definitely deserving of an A grade, just because you're coming off what was one of the worst seasons they've had in this modern era of college football in 2024, and you get to a college football playoff. So good for them for doing that.
Yeah, it's an A for Oklahoma for sure. 10 wins, going to the playoff. I know they lose the home playoff game. That's tough, but this team, I know Oklahoma, there was a lot of expectations this team could break through and have a good year, but we also had a lot of questions about whether or not Brent Venables was even that great of a coach, to be completely honest, based on how last season went. And is Oklahoma going to be built to compete in the SEC? They were built to compete in the SEC. They do have things to figure out, but this was a good, exciting year for them, and it's something they can hopefully build off of more going forward. Last team that we'll really kind of discuss, the others will kind of get quick thoughts, but the last good team in the SEC, how do we grade their season? The Vanderbilt Commodores. I mean, it's got to be an A+.
A+. I mean, I know that you lost to Iowa, but still, though, 10 wins for Vanderbilt football. That's an A+, an automatic A+.
Yeah, no need to really discuss that. Even though you lost the ReliaQuest Bowl, 10 wins for Vanderbilt is unheard of. So absolutely an A+.
Oh,
yeah, 10-win season.
And you beat
they beat this game. They won the game they care the most about. Tucker, sorry.
Yeah.
still, it's a huge season for them. Didn't end the way they would have liked it to, but you're looking at a 10-win season. Absolutely massive. Everybody else in the SEC, you were either incredibly mid or just straight up not good. But for some of those teams, incredibly mid might still have been a successful season, possibly. Let's run through all of these. We'll keep our thoughts quick and easy. Missouri, 8-5 type season for them, or 8-5 overall, 4-4 in the SEC.
God, that's like a C plus.
I don't know where to go on this one. I don't know if I'd go C or just B, because like it's for a place like Mizzou, it's not realistic to win 10 games there each season. So no, I don't know if I'd go that low. And then you consider the quarterback injuries too. I might have to go B on this one. I'm probably being too nice, but I don't think their season was that bad.
You shouldn't go in double overtimes against Auburn, in my opinion. It's terrible. And they looked terrible against Vandy. I mean, yeah, they lost a close one to the Crimson Tide. They looked really bad against A&M. Oklahoma, they just kind of went a little easy on them. But on the bright side, they did beat their main rival, the Kansas Jayhawks. But on the downside, it was a sloppy game against Virginia to end the season. But either way, it's not a good look for Missouri. But one thing's for sure, there could be better times ahead in 2026.
I think their fan base is pretty disappointing, but I probably grade it as about a B-type season. I mean, they didn't beat a single good team. That is a knock on them for the year. But the losses were all to good competition. You mentioned the injury. That certainly played a role. I don't think you can just look at this as like an 8-win season as being terrible. The fact 8-win season, like Missouri fans are disappointed with that. And I get the way they started the year plays a role, but like that tells you the job Drinkwitz has done there. But I still think it's a B. Tennessee, 8-5. This was weirdly coming into the year. I think 8-5, a lot of people probably predicted pretty close to that, maybe a little bit higher. But at the same time, probably still feels like not quite meeting expectations. Tucker, where do you go?
This is so complicated because you came in with the expectation that the offense will just kind of see what it does, but we know we got this solid defense. What ended up happening was you have this phenomenal offense, and the defense is pretty not great. So this one, it's hard because, again, I think this is about where people expected this team. I just think the way things played out just made it a little bit more disappointing in some ways. And after that Georgia game, the loss to Georgia, you really didn't get better as the season went on. I mean, you look at the one good moment from this season really is the fact that you exercised some demons in the swamp. Outside of that, you did nothing else. And that was not against a good Florida team either. So
no.
For this one, I don't know. I might go B-. That may be too generous, but again, you have to think about what was expected of this Tennessee team going in the season. I think the fact that these things played out very differently than many of us were expecting is something that I think has made more cause for disappointment. Also, the fact that you lost to Vanderbilt, and actually, you know what, losing to Vanderbilt that'll get you down to a C+. And losing by 3 touchdowns at home and giving out in the second half of that game, actually. So I'm changing my grade to C+ on that one because of that game.
Yeah, I mean, I've been ranging between like a B- and a C+, to be honest with you, because it's like on the one hand, you look bad against Vanderbilt. You look really bad. And on the other hand, there is that one bright side that you got your first win at the Swamp since the dark ages of the internet against the Florida Gators, but it's a really bad Florida team, of course, who doesn't even know who's going to be their head coach next week, to be honest. That was pretty bad, honestly. But, like that Georgia game, that was a terrible way to lose right there. And bad clock management against Mississippi State. Yeah, you won, but bad clock management at the tail end. It was just terrible. It got lucky against Arkansas. This is 2025 Arkansas, not 1969 Arkansas. They can't get a win in Athens or Tuscaloosa. That's not good right there. and they didn't look good against Oklahoma. And, Illinois, you lost to old Butthead from Beavis and Bud in the Music City Bowl in the Music City Bowl.
They had checked out at that point.
Yeah, it's just not good. So
I'm firmly on the
C plus,
C plus, B minus line, right there with you. You can go either. Defensively was a massive disappointment with the guys they had coming back. That was expected to be a pretty good unit. Offensively was better than I thought it was going to be. A lot better than I thought it was going to be. So give them credit there. But another team that did not end up having a single significant win over the course of the season, and lost to the good teams they faced. And you're right, losing to Vanderbilt at home in the manner you did, that probably does knock it down. So a little bit disappointing, all things considered, for Tennessee. Probably should have been a little bit better. All right, now we're firmly in the bad teams, but you could still grade these in a certain range, I guess, if you wanted. I'll go quick. LSU, I've got them as an F. Like, that team was they were expected to compete for the conference, compete for a playoff spot with everything they had coming back. The defense looked loaded. But the question was, is the offensive line going to be good? And no, it was a complete disaster, and it's what killed them. But
didn't score more than 25 on an FBS opponent. That's crazy, or at least not in the regular season.
Right.
I mean, yeah, they exercised the demons on winning the big non-con game week 1. Everybody was hyping them up so much after week 1. They're like, oh, LSU's going to be a danger. It's like, let's see how they do the rest of the season first, because they can't quite get it done against Ole Miss on the road. What happens? They lose to Ole Miss, and it's all downhill from there. Because, I mean, they don't look good against Vandy. And they got beat by A&M so bad that not only were LSU fans calling for Kelly to get fired, but Texas A&M fans were joining LSU fans in calling for Brian Kelly to get fired. That's bad right there. That's not good for your team, especially when you have a team that's expected to get in the playoffs. You don't get it done. You look pitiful. You look pitiful against pretty much everybody. And I'm looking at all these games for 2025, only two games where they scored 35 points or more. One was against Southeastern Louisiana. The other one was the Texas Bowl against the Houston Cougars. So this 2025 season, that's a D- for LSU. It's a D-. Ugh.
Yeah, just really bad here. By the way, Unrivaled, we're not ignoring you. I have not seen anything with Rayola in Tennessee. He's staying at Oregon. It sounds like he knew that was going to be a situation Dante Moore could potentially return, and that he's okay with it. So Rayola is going to be an Oregon Duck next season. So Tennessee, it's going to have to be Gavin Suckup for the Tennessee Vols. We've gotten here a little bit late for that. Go rewatch. We talked about Gavin Suckup. This is a Gavin Suckup podcast moving forward. I think it was a complete failure for LSU. Kentucky, 5-7, 2-6. I mean, honestly, they had a couple nice wins there late in the season. I'll put it at a C.
Yeah. I think this year, just with you're coming off a 4-8 season, didn't know what they were going to do with Mark Stoops there at the end of the year, but you improve actually from 4 to 5 wins. You have to grade Kentucky on a little bit of a different scale as opposed to the rest of the SEC, just because of what that program is traditionally. And that's, their highs have only been so high under Mark Stoops. So you just didn't feel like he was going to be able to get to that point again. So, you're able to do some nice things there at the end of the year. So I'd put it at a solid C. Maybe that's too generous, maybe C-. But overall, I mean, definitely not an F for them.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I mean, C- right there. I mean, Mark Stoops was able to get another win against the Florida Gators. I mean, it's like, that's unheard of. Kentucky beating Florida before 2018, right? But we saw that a lot with Kentucky, as they were constantly making Florida their punching bag in college football. But they did not reach a bowl game. They let themselves get shut out by Louisville. And honestly, we're going to wait and see what the Will Stein era brings for 2026. Should be pretty fun, but it feels weird not seeing Mark Stoops on the sidelines after 2025 at Kentucky. Like, I don't know why, but it just does.
between let's just try to close out here, and because I'll give my thoughts on this. I'll give my thoughts on Mississippi State because they're interesting. We'll do the Bulldogs real quick. I think if you're going to go big picture, you would probably say a B. I do have to say C, and I'm not just trying to be a negative fan. The fact that they blew a 17-point lead at home to Texas, the fact that they closed out the Florida game the way they did. Tennessee, I've talked about, that's not a game that I can look at and say they should have won because that's a game where both teams made a lot of dumb mistakes and gave the other team opportunities. So in the end, the better team ultimately ended up winning. So I don't look at the Tennessee game and say State should have won the game, but State could have won the game if they had played a clean game at home, which is something they did not do throughout the entire season. They got steamrolled late down the stretch. The bowl performance was not what you wanted to see. Jeff Lebby had a lot of coaching blunders that I think people who were not paying close attention and were just looking at the overall results would look at. Yes, they took a big step forward. Yes, they became at least competitive with power conference teams. They got a couple power conference wins. The Arizona State win was incredible. This is firmly a C season. It was barely passing for Jeff Lebby, all things considered. Before the year, would I have taken 5 wins at an APR bowl? I would have. Once you see the season play out, things change a little bit. And like this team should have won more, but they barely did enough. I'll give them a C.
Yeah, I'm there with you. I think I'm going to go with the C right there. Cause I mean, it's like, once again, like the Tennessee Mississippi State game, because I felt like it said a lot more about the Vols than it did about Mississippi State. It was like Mississippi State blew it against the Volunteers. They blew it against a pitiful Florida team. They blew it against the Texas Longhorns. But on the positive note, they did have an amazing Hail Mary against Arizona State. That's always a positive. But at the same time, after starting 4-0 with your non-con slate, you end the season at 1-8. 1-8. That's not good. You only get in a bowl game because, some teams are saying, okay, we don't want to go to this bowl game. Okay, we don't have enough for our coach. We don't have enough of a coaching staff for this bowl game. Okay, I don't know what I'm doing here. So then you see Mississippi State going to the Dukes Mayo Bowl because, like, hey, I want to come to the Dukes Mayo Bowl. Mississippi State says yes. And then Wake Forest, unfortunately, made mincemeat out of the Mississippi State Bulldogs. But then again, bright side, there's a little bit more progress than there was in 2024. Maybe there's some optimism in Starkville. Who knows? I say give it a few years because I believe it's stability. I'm going to say C for the Mississippi State Bulldogs for the 2025 season.
I'm going to go a little bit higher. I'll go C+. I definitely don't think it breaks B territory just because I just consider several different things here. Obviously, the mess that Jeff Lebby walked into in 2024 and having to get that program close to where it had been under Mullen and of course, Leach. And getting to 5 wins, I think is progress. Obviously, it's something that you're not exactly proud of at the end of the season because 5 wins is still a losing record, but you're heading in the right direction. I think that's what the plan was for Mississippi State this year, like be a little bit more of a competitor in the league than you were last year. But at the same time, while they got better, technically speaking, they did not get better as the season went on. Of course, you have those 3 games against Tennessee, Florida, and Texas. You don't get better, or you lose all those games. And then not only do you lose those games, you get beat even worse down the stretch, including the bowl game. So I think getting to a bowl in itself is an accomplishment, but I do look at this season with Mississippi State. You don't necessarily get tons of warm, fuzzy feelings with it.
Yeah, I didn't want to – I hate that, like, I was trying to get us to go through these, and then my team comes, we turn it into a discussion. But State is a very unique thing where if you go big picture and, like, you're not, like, keeping tabs on, like, how things are performing, you would say, well, Jeff Lebby's doing an incredible job there. If you're actually watching the team, you're like, they could – some things are concerning, but the overall trajectory is so positive. We'll see.
Well, at least like Mississippi State wasn't expected to be a playoff team or have a say in who gets into the playoffs, unlike the South Carolina Gamecocks.
So what I was going to do here, we can hit any of these teams. But between Florida, Auburn, South Carolina, and Arkansas, are any of us not giving those teams an F?
No, no, I'm not.
Arkansas F. Like, good God. Like, looking at their whole season.
Lost 10 straight.
Like, they had a shot to win against Memphis. They blow it. They have a shot to upset Ole Miss. They blow it. Once again, they blew it against Tennessee. They look like crap against A&M. They look like crap against Auburn. Auburn of all teams. They look like crap against Auburn. It's like, oh my God. It's like you really should not be. You're going for you're 2-10. I mean, what are you gonna do? Brag about being the best 2-10 team? Oh my God. Yeah, like people were saying, oh, Bobby Petrino is gonna be net take. It's like, no. 2011 has come and gone. This is not 2011. These are the 2020s decades. And, just like looking at the Florida Gators, you upset Texas. But that's it right there. I mean, like the South Florida game, it was just a downward spiral afterwards. I mean, when Brandon Betts was spitting on that South Florida guy, it was the spit that basically started the world going downhill for the Florida Gators. I mean, you're expected to be a dark horse for the ACC. You're expected to be a playoff team for 2025 or have a say in who gets in. What happens? You blow it. You stink like crap against South Florida. You're terrible against literally everybody on your schedule, which, yeah, you upset Mississippi State. Well, not upset Mississippi State. I can't even think straight on these Florida Gators because they're that terrible. I mean, you upset Texas, you beat Mississippi State. I mean, on a bright side, you beat Florida State, but that's not a good Florida State team. It's not like 1994 or 1993. That's a big F, like we all agreed on the Florida Gators. And like the Auburn Tigers, every game, don't even get me started on their whole season. Like week 1, it was so funny. Like, I don't know if you guys looked through Twitter on week 1, but there are a lot of Auburn people shooting their mouths off, bragging that they beat Baylor. It's not like Baylor had RG3 or anything. Good grief.
Yeah.
It was terrible.
Yeah, I'm a solid up on all these, as we know, and I'll keep it pretty brief with all these. Obviously, with Auburn, you've got you got all the talent in the world. You can't figure out the quarterback situation, and you continue to just repeat what you did the year before. So, obviously, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. That's exactly what happened with Auburn. To me, Florida and South Carolina, two different versions of the same team where you've got quarterbacks with high upside, but when they hit the floor, it's awful. And we saw them hit the floor a lot this season. So did not go well for either one of those teams. And of course, Arkansas, you can make the greatest 2-10 team of all time argument, but overall, not a good football team. So no, none of those teams deserve anything better than an F.
Oh, agreed. Yeah. And just like looking at South Carolina, they blew it against the Alabama Crimson Tide, and they blew it against A&M. And I believe that A&M's 31-30 victory, where they were trailing 30-3, is the largest comeback in SEC history by Texas A&M. And the fact South Carolina blew that game, that's bad.
Yeah, that one was just the most stunning of all the blown leads that we've seen in a long time.
It was surprising Beamer get fired after that. No, look, South Carolina and Arkansas, I did not have high expectations for those teams coming in, but I mean, I thought they'd be better than they were. Like I thought Arkansas could maybe get to 5 wins and be in range to try to go to a bowl. They had the offense. They figured that part out. Defensively was a complete total train wreck, which that was going into the season. They did not address into the portal, and it came to kill them. South Carolina, I was not a super big believer, but the fact that you went 4-8 when you had Lenore Sellers and Dylan Stewart as the two guys leading both sides of the ball, that's wasting those guys. It's a failure of a season. Florida and Auburn, those are two teams that on paper should have been really good this year. And, both had their moments where they were close, but both of them had a ton of talent that they completely squandered and wasted, which is why those coaches are no longer employed. So, failure for all of those teams across the board. Much of the bottom half of the SEC, it was rough. But we gave out a couple C's, gave out some A's to the teams towards the top of the league, as you would expect. That feels that kind of obvious. But I felt like we had a good mix throughout. So those are our grades for every team in the SEC in 2025. We will continue as we go into the offseason, taking a little bit of a closer look at, hey, how did the season play out for each of these teams truly? And sort of breaking down where they stand going into the offseason. What is the early look ahead for 2026? We'll keep up with the transfer portal more because obviously that's going to continue. We'll figure out if Gavin Suckup is the savior for Tennessee. we're going to get into that for sure.
Gavin Suckup live.
Yes, and the NFL draft is getting closer and closer, so we'll start looking at some NFL draft content. So, and look, won't be long until it's spring football, and we're having to gear up and give our previews for the spring. So, a ton of great content coming here on the Voice of College SEC, the Voice of College Football. Definitely subscribe to the channel and have the notifications turned on so you know when we go live and whenever there's new content put up. Jackson's been crushing it with interviews. Obviously, you can follow each of us on the social handles below. You have Tucker at Tennessee, Voice of College Football, Jackson, Alabama, the Voice of College Football. You have myself at Mississippi State, Voice of College Football. Going to want to follow all of that and keep the great content, follow all the great content across those channels. Appreciate everybody for tuning in, and we will see you all next time.